Hello, friends. On Sunday, September 24, the day we call Gathering Sunday here at Fair Street, we not only dedicated the upcoming year of ministry to God, but we also started a year-long celebration of our 175th anniversary. While our actual and official anniversary is in January of 2024, we wanted to begin on Sunday, September 24, as it marks the actual day way back in 1849, 174 years ago, when the foundation of this church was laid. For 175 years, we have been in the hands of an amazing and loving God, the Potter, who has been shaping and forming us into who we are today as we strive to live into sharing God's love and generous welcome with our neighbors, both near and far. It was a beautiful morning of worship, followed by brunch, where nearly 60 folks gathered to a time of fellowship, good food, laughter, and stories. It was truly an amazing morning. Following brunch, we had time to hear reflections and stories from former ministers and their families. First, we heard letters read by Linda Ziewicz. These letters were from the late Reverend Randy Bosch's children, Paul Bosch and Kate Beverstead. Following, we heard and watched a video greeting from Reverend Ed Kuhn, and then we wrapped up our time together hearing from Reverend James Alley and Reverend Dr. Bob Graham, both whom were here in person. I had the opportunity to simply ask questions and sit back and listen and let them share. So this video holds a couple things for you to enjoy as you decide to keep watching. First, there's some pictures that are down in the parish room on display, some from years ago, some from more recent years. So the next time you make your way to church, stop by the parish room and take a closer look at all of the pictures. But don't just stop there, because we do hope and plan to add more pictures over the course of the upcoming year. Following the pictures, you'll be able to watch and hear the recordings and hear the stories that were shared during our time over brunch. Finally, we are working on gathering as many stories from Fair Streeters as possible, and we hope that you will help us by sharing your story. We'll be sending out an invitation later this week to explain what we're looking for, why your story is so important, even an incentive for you to participate, and why you won't want to miss out on the January gathering. So stay tuned. In the meantime, just a word of gratitude to the Team 175 group, Sharon Amarelli, Mary Cook-Ferraro, Bob Nijelski, Stephen Bliss, Linda Ziewicz, Cheryl Williams, and Ann Kalmbach. And a word of gratitude to Bill Kimball, who snapped many pictures throughout worship and the brunch in September, and also to Colleen Schuon and Gay Janssen, who helped with the food preparation. Friends, it is my hope and my prayer that you enjoy this video of pictures and stories from our first gathering, and that we see each other soon. May the peace of Christ be with you today and always. Take care.
And then when I came down here and I had my first meeting with the consistory, the questions that were asked were wonderful. They were insightful. And I don't know how many of you remember a man named Terry Parmenter, who was a professor at Ulster Community College. And I remember he asked the tough questions, and he wasn't going to let me get away with anything. I thought he was about to boot me out. And I forget the question he asked, but apparently I got the answer correct. And I could see his whole body just relax. And he said, "You're my man. You're my man." And I think meeting with the consistory and the search committee, I knew this is where I wanted to be. And again, I served 11 and a half years, so this was my longest pastorate. And I love the Hurley Reformed Church, which I served for 10 years.
We won't tell them.
Okay, some of them are here.
They sent spies.
Okay, yeah, they sent spies. But believe me, this is my favorite congregation, and I feel like a transitional figure in some ways. Can I go on?
Sure.
Yes. Because there are people here, you know, I married Roy and Linda, I married Bev and Walt. And what I remember about Bev and Walt, apart from them falling in love, was that I was a jogger once upon a time, and we were jogging down the hill and I wasn't a good jogger, and Bev said, "Well, you know, we'll jog together." That was the last time I saw her. And I remember I had a wonderful secretary, Marcia Mound, and Marcia was wonderful, and Sharon Amarelli would always come in with goodies for the both of us, but Sharon, you know, Sharon had her agenda. And if anything, including the second coming, conflicted with her bowling night, the second coming had to wait. The second coming had to wait. And Audrey Kithcart, you know, there was a group of teachers who I loved, and I remember Pat Adesso, who was such a dear and wonderful friend. That was so special. I remember Gay finally saying, "I've had it with this other church. I'm coming to Fair Street." And she has been such a wonderful figure. Who else do I know? I know Leslie Clark. We had these wonderful retreats, right, Leslie? And Sonia, yes. Sonia Natoli and Ron, and Pam is back there too, who taught me hockey something or other.
Oh,
Hacky sack, thank you.
That's a hard one.
So, you know, there are so many, it's so wonderful to see so many of you still active and still around. It's wonderful for me to be here. October 7th, I celebrate the 50th anniversary of my ordination, and I would not rather be in any other place than to be here with the church who loved me. I mean, who loved me. And I was going through some difficult personal times. The positive thing was that I had gotten a book contract from Thomas Nelson to write a book. And they said, "Look, you have to fulfill this contract." This is back in '84. "Or if you don't fulfill this contract, we're going to have to pull it." So I asked the Fair Street Church, having served here for 2.5 years, if I could take 2 or 3 months off. And at first there was grumbling, understandably. But they said, "Yeah, as long as you come back. As long as you come back." And this book would not have gotten written if it weren't for the loving people of this congregation. So,
Thanks be to God.
thanks. And Cheryl too. Cheryl, would talk about everything, and we've been through the valleys, your family, been through the darkest valleys, and here you are, you know, a great woman of faith, and Linda and John, you know, John and I and Jeff Grapuso, after every consistory meeting, would go out to the local bar and just celebrate it, you know? Yeah, that wasn't an affirmation I heard right there. It just wasn't an affirmation, but yeah.
But you know what, you're a very competitive man. We had the youth group and Jennifer, who did a scavenger hunt in that red Honda.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and you had to come first. Came around the corner like on 2 wheels.
Now, one of the things I've done in retirement is I have 2 Porsches. So I have a Boxster 718, which I purchased at my retirement, and I just got a Carrera 4S, which I purchased because I'm a madman.
So needless to say, there's no scavenger hunts where you will be driving.
No.
The scavenger hunts. Oh, that's good. That's good. James, what was it that drew you to Fair Street to serve as pastor? You
As I
were.
say, well, I really can't add too much to what I said. I was just here.
You were in the right
Okay,
spot.
well, figuratively speaking, like I grew up, I was in the Sunday school here, and confirmation came about 5 years later, and I guess, and my mother joined the church at the same time. It was April 1960. It was a confirmation class, I guess, Dean Dykstra. It was his last one. And, well, after I graduated from high school, I was kind of in and out. College, back here, graduate school, back here. Then I traveled, well, basically throughout the hemisphere. And actually the first time I met Bob Graham, I was just dropping in for kicks at the senior residence on 80 Washington Avenue and seeing somebody named Bill Hawk, and none other than Bob was giving communion to the troops. And when I finally ended up back here, well, yeah, I got married, but my wife wasn't going to have anything to do with Alaska. So I was back here. Where do you go to church? Here. And I was in construction, but I got a kick out of this minister who, you look vaguely familiar. And if it hadn't been for you, I wouldn't be here. I can't say anymore. Well, basically after that, I went into the ministry. It was a second career by then. I probably done less damage in ministry than I did in construction. So then as congregations age, people like me seem to be around, and through no other value than longevity, I'm here once again. Listening to what people have to say, I'll make 2 points at some length, but then I'll call it quits. He talked about the love of the congregation. That's true. That's true. When I was still in construction, for one reason, who knows why, I was asked to preach during the summer here. Somehow, a tape of that did survive well into maybe 10 years later, and I listened to it. And it was an act of love on the part of the congregation to sit through 25 minutes of disconnected stuff. And people are saying, speak up. Why can't you take that message? You couldn't hear anything that I said. And yet, even after that, 4 or 5 years later, when I did go to seminary, I was offered a chance to help out here. Point up. Love of the congregation. Through me ever since I came through there in 1955. Second thing, listening to the stories here. Names get mentioned. Some of them are familiar to you, some of them are not. Same with me. But when I've done pulpit supply, and thank God for kids who show up even in the most elderly congregations, I play a trick on them. What did you hear from Sunday school last night or last week? So the congregation starts to laugh. Okay, smarty pants, you guys. What did the preacher preach about last week? So, then I come back. Okay, you kids, what did you have for dinner Thursday night? Same thing for the older people in the congregation. But what would have happened if you'd eaten that and nothing at all? And the kids will probably come back, well, you die of starvation. You don't remember the meal, but you have the benefit of it. And it works that way in spiritual affairs too. It is a wonderful compliment to a pastor to somebody who says, boy, I remember what you said. You didn't just talk about devil worship or economics. You talked about something that made something. But even if you don't, the fact that you've been there for the worship service makes a difference to the pastor, and it makes a difference to you. It's spiritual food. Even if you don't remember the people that have been through here or what's been said, you're benefiting from that nourishment by being here. And if I say any more, I'll just repeat myself, but that's basically it. Quick rejoinder. Thank you, Kendra, for making this possible, and thank you, Bob, for everything. Everything.
So I'm glad we're laughing because I'm wondering if you're willing to share, maybe if you remember one of your more embarrassing moments as pastor at Fair Street, if you had one.
I'll say I've already answered that. That 1991 sermon. That was I should have left town. Go for it.
There were two things that I remember. One was I used to play rock and roll guitar in a rock and roll band, and often on Saturday nights I'd be up at I forget what the hotel on the mountain or whatever, and yeah, I'd be singing and playing and dancing, and I remember it was Christmas Eve, and I'm reading the scripture, and instead of saying the wise men, I said the wine men. And the other embarrassing thing was when I first got here, I forgot that there was a time change. And one of the people I missed the most, who was so unique and original, was Perk Gasly, who was the choir director here, and who was just a unique and wonderful and special individual. And he called up and he said it was 10 o'clock, and I thought it was 9 o'clock. And he said, do you know where you're supposed to be? So I had a t-shirt on and my robe flying in the wind as I raced up one of the aisles to get into the pulpit in time. So that was somewhat embarrassing.
I actually thought you were going to lead with that story.
The other embarrassing thing, I'm not sure that it was embarrassing or not, but I had a wonderful secretary, Marcia Mao, and she said to me, do you mind if I bring a bottle of alcohol with me to work? And I said, well, I don't think that's a good idea unless you share it with me. And then it's okay. Well, her husband had just retired from IBM. And she said, he follows me around wherever I go. And I said, let me talk to him. And I said, Bob, have you thought about going back to work? So I'm sure there are other more embarrassing.
That's good, thank you. Other than your 1991 sermon, James?
Well, actually, another sort of attempt, when I was getting a little bit of student help here, I was supposed to divvy up the sermon, the order of worship with somebody else, and I have a way of zoning out. And at some point, when I was my turn, I think I was saying exactly what I was supposed to have said 4 or 5 minutes earlier. And I would like to believe that there's nobody around here who remembers that. But now I spilled the beans. You gotta pay attention to what you're doing. That includes church services, especially. In fact, I had a couple of near misses today because we had to divvy up
Don't tell them.
Well,
If they don't know, they don't know.
well, I was just trying to keep everybody on their toes. It was purely intentional.
Yes.
I think I better shut up.
All right, I only have one more question to ask, and then I'm going to let you share whatever you want to share, or maybe if anybody else. But, so, one of the things that became very evident to me a few years ago was they didn't teach me that in seminary. Like, they didn't teach me how to take a church through a pandemic. That wasn't. So, when you were serving, and there's been many other things that I've said out loud. Well, they didn't teach that in seminary. Several. But what's one thing that you remember thinking, they don't talk about that in seminary? Or maybe they should. Or I'm going to go back to seminary and teach this class. Anything?
Well, I will make a general comment that occurs to many people, but actually Roger Leonard, now retired, he showed me a loose leaf that he never got around to publishing. Everything you did not learn in seminary from A to Z. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it, but I've written a different
You should
version.
check it out if you can. But we may not have examples right in mind, but it is a very common question.
No, that's.
I think maybe seminary didn't prepare us to understand the multitasking nature of ministry. That what makes ministry so difficult. And you have a wonderful minister here, by the way. You really do. But what seminary couldn't prepare you for are the different hats a minister has to wear. You have to be a good administrator. You have to be a good preacher. You have to be good in the nursing homes. You have to be good in pastoral calling at homes. You have to be good in just kind of a panoply of different areas. And it's so hard to master all of those. And I think ministry is the most rewarding job in the world, but I think it's one of the most demanding too, because you're never, and this is what they don't teach you either, you're always on call. You're always on call. So in the middle of the night, if you get a call that someone is dying, you want to be there because you're a minister. I mean, that's who you are. It's not what your job is, it's who you are. But nevertheless, it's very hard to extract time for yourself. And they don't teach you that in seminary because the professors have time to themselves. Ministers, if you're faithful, you don't, and nor can you. Now, the Gospel of Mark is great because there are 27 euthoi, which means immediately. Immediately, Jesus is going here. Immediately, Jesus is going there. Immediately, Jesus is going over there. And that's the nature of ministry that becomes so difficult that you don't learn. So I'm happy to be retired.
Thank you. Does anybody have a question that you'd like to ask of these two? Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Now,
I
Oh.
don't have a question, but I have to say congratulations, Bob Graham, on 50 years. Next week or the week after?
yeah, October 7th.
That's
yeah.
amazing.
And I was ordained with the first woman to be ordained in the Reformed Church.
Which was
Joyce Sedge.
Joyce Sedge, the week later, right?
No,
No,
she-
the same day?
It was wonderful. It was wonderful because I was almost forgotten. You know, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, traditional minister in the hubbub and joyous furor of having the first woman in the Reformed Church ordained, October 7th, 1973. They ordained her. They were about leaving. They said, "Oh yeah, we got this traditional white guy.
Joyce and what's his name?
Yeah, Joyce and what's his name? Reverend what's his name, will you?" I do have one other thing.
Yeah, share it.
I want to thank Kendra too, because my second book was a book called Christ in COVID-19, Meditations for Peace in Times of Turmoil, and Kendra was really kind enough to use it in one of her book groups.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I'm just finishing a novel on the Civil War, but it's more than the Civil War, but the initial scene, the first 20 chapters begin at the Battle of Fredericksburg in December of 1862. But it goes on from there. A lot of the characters will meet in that struggle. A few of them will migrate to this area, so a lot of the action will take place in the Rondout, up here in West Chestnut Street, and in Hurley. And in Kingston, you'll get an idea of what the stores were like in 1863 in Kingston. Also, the themes of the book are failed apocalyptic thinking, slavery in the South, in Fredericksburg, in Richmond, and also what slavery was like in this area, the Pine Street area in particular, what happened in the Pine Street area in Kingston. So if you like history, also there are flashbacks to the 2nd century Roman world in Anatolia, in the religion that competed best with Christianity, I think, was the Asclepian religion, the healing religion, where people were healed in hospitals throughout the Mediterranean world. So it's a 2-volume. The first volume hopefully will be coming out at the end of November. If you're interested, I would just ask you to put your name here and give me your phone number, and I'll tell you when it's on Amazon. And it'll be on Barnes & Noble and Amazon, but Amazon is the best because you can leave a review. If you purchase it, you can leave a review. So I'm a struggling writer at my advanced age, so that would be a big help.
Congratulations, that's exciting. I was gonna ask, how thick are these books? Because that's a
Well,
lot of content.
It's the first volume is 279
Okay.
pages.
That's exciting.
But if you
The title, what's the title? Is
the
it one-
title is Apocalypses.
Good morning. I'm going to read letters that we received from Katie Bosch Beaverstedt and Paul Bosch, children of Reverend Bosch. Greetings, Fair Street Church, and congratulations on the 175th anniversary of being a place for meaningful worship and community. I'm Katie Bosch Beaverstedt, and I was in 9th grade when my family moved to Kingston for my father, Randall Bosch, to be your minister. Here are a few of my memories of the years at Fair Street. First, my dad as minister, it wasn't always easy being a PK, preacher's kids. We were habitually late for church each Sunday, and sometimes showed up in jeans just to rock the boat. But being the PK also had its privileges. Everyone knew us and surrounded us with a loving and supportive faith community. We also learned every hallway, stairway, and sometimes creepy closet in the church. My husband Mark and I were married at Fair Street in 1979. I'll never forget the smiling faces of so many church members who came to our ceremony, especially the older women who could have been my pseudo-grandmothers. When our first child, Katrina, was born, church members sent personal and special messages and gifts, even though by then we were living in Indiana. We still have many of those gifts, including Christmas ornaments and a baby quilt which Eleanor Ledak made from some of my mother's unused fabric. Church youth group was an anchor during my high school years. Fran and Dennis Cox showed us how to live as Christian teenagers with unconditional love and a heap of fun times. Fran took my girlfriends and I to Young Life Camp, and the Coxes took us for retreats at the Henneke's farm. I'll never forget the day that Fran told my small circle of close youth group girlfriends that we needed to stop being a Christian chick clique. We were mortified, but then realized we'd not been inclusive to all the girls in our youth group. A good lesson. Sunday school was also a place of learning, growing, questioning, and maturing in our Christian faith. My dad's sermons were legendary. He always had at least one good story which would bring laughter or sometimes tears, and he had great jokes. His messages were fresh and relevant, even to his petulant teenage daughter. I remember his high energy and dedication to the Fair Street congregation, even when it meant evenings, meetings, and Saturdays watching him cut and tape, literally, his sermon at the kitchen table. Congratulations again to Fair Street Church on this momentous occasion. May you continue to be a place of deep faith and an anchor to all who enter your doors. With love, Katie Bosch Beaverstack. Hi, members and friends of Fair Street Church. Heartfelt congratulations on your 175th anniversary. My name is Paul Bosch, and my father, Randall Bosch, was pastor of the church from early 1971 through the start of 1981. I arrived in Kingston halfway through 6th grade and spent my junior high and high school years as an active part of the church. A few memories that stand out. When I arrived in Kingston, I had a very difficult time going to George Washington Elementary School. I was an immediate target of Wood the Hood and other unsavory characters. Who would have thought 6th grade could be downright dangerous? But I found a warm and welcoming group at Fair Street Church, and both Sunday school and youth fellowship were full of fun and friendly kids who took me in as one of them. The church had so many activities. I was able to build relationships and gain a core group of good friends. My parents, too, seemed to enjoy socializing with church friends, and it seemed like there was always a party or other gathering to go to. Junior high was better for me, but of course this was a time of questioning and forming my own person. I really appreciated the fact that the church kept me grounded with strong Christian values and people that supported making the right choices in life. As I think back on those years, some of my best and most vivid memories were from Sunday night junior high fellowship, often at Pat and Ralph Stevens' house down the street from me. We played games like Under the Chin, Pass the Grapefruit. Fun times were mixed with important spiritual discussions. And the retreats. They were amazing, and often in beautiful places in nature. But most importantly, they helped me grow spiritually in a positive and loving manner. I learned a lesson I hopefully follow even today, that being a Christian is more about loving others and being kind than following strict rules of behavior. Through my high school years, fewer of my friends could attend church events as work, sports, and other responsibilities took over. But I really enjoyed the many fun times we had at church events and remained active right through my senior year. I didn't have a curfew, but the house rule was I had to make it to Sunday school no matter what. That probably kept me out of some trouble late on Saturday nights and brought me back to the place I should be. It was fun being the preacher's kid too. People in church knew me from day one, and over time I got to know them all. What a warm and encircling church family. I worked at Mrs. Elston's house, an elderly church member around the corner from church, doing house and yard work and shoveling snow. and loved to come over to my dad's office for a rest and a chat. That office, with all its owl lamps and figurines and books and pictures, was like a second home. And I'll never forget the day my dad called me to come to his office quickly with a net, since a bat had taken up residence. I liked my dad's sermons too. I have never experienced quite the same elsewhere. He always had good stories and humor that drew you in and helped him make his theological points. Many of his sermons were like guides to Christian living, which have stuck with me these many years. He loved the church and felt close to his congregation. I remember when he and my mom dressed up in old-fashioned clothing and rode a horse-drawn carriage for the 125th anniversary celebration. What fun. I wish I could remember more of the names of the people that played such important roles in my church life. But as I think about it today, I do remember some of the faces and the overall kindness and support I felt from the Fair Street congregation. I am so grateful for the guidance and warmth I received in the Fair Street Church community. I wish you all a wonderful 175th anniversary celebration and best wishes for many more years of meaningful spiritual growth. My love to you all, Paul Bosch.
Greetings, Fair Streeters. I am Ed Kuhn, the old one, who has been retired for 27 years. I send my greetings to you as you begin your celebration of your 175th anniversary. Thank you, Kendra, for the note you sent me. I wish that we could fly. I could fly that 3,000 miles to be with you, but we'll have to use the internet instead. Betty and I and our three daughters, Carol, Mary, and Janet, began our Western wanderings back in 1970, which means that we've been away from Kingston for 53 years. That's a long time. We have been just filled with memories of the times that we were there for those years. And I would certainly tell you that I remember even coming back for the anniversary, your 150th, and preaching at that particular service. But more recently, in 2017, Betty and I were there as guests of Ginny and Len Cleveland, and also bringing our adopted daughter, at least that's what we call her, Dory and Ed O'Shea with us. Dory and Carol, our oldest, have shared life together and birthdays within 2 weeks of each other for all the years, I think from kindergarten on. So we acclaim her as ours. When we came to that service, we had the wonderful blessing of being able to sit behind Jerry Nathan and to listen to that voice after all these years and the faith that brought that music that she sang so beautifully. And she was Betty's prayer partner for all those years as well. We were married back in 1956. Our first home together was at 17 Seminary Place in an apartment in the back of the building which is no longer. And then that was our first home together. We still have the wooden shoes that hung on our door, now at our entryway. But our second home was, guess where? At Fair Street Reformed Church, in the Sunday school room just behind the church office, looking out of the window at Susan Umblebee's backyard. Susan was a student at the time going to summer school. She used to throw little pebbles at our window to help wake us up, and she'd come over with a cake and bake the cake there at the church, and then call her friends, and they'd come together and we'd talk about Reformed Church mission places. And it was a wonderful experience and easy for us to adopt her. At that service, we were able to remember so many people as we were able to sit there and worship together. Also, we had the Pauline Liska, we remember, as the secretary who was involved with our family long before we were even thought of. And certainly Vivian Ballou, dear Vivian, and all she did for us. And a man by the name of Uncle Charlie, who used to invite Betty and me to go up to Woodstock to the shows that were there. we moved from the seminary to your place, and then back again to the seminary. And then, would you believe it? We were sent there to be mentored by Dean Dykstra, the beloved pastor of the church. But the consistory gave Dean the whole summer off. And so he moved up to Kennebunk up in Maine, and we continued there alone. That was by the design of the seminary that I came. The second time, I was welcomed back for another summer by the people of Fair Street Reformed Church. And so we had just 2 times of being able to stay with you all and become acquainted with you. Back in Seminary Place, we were there for a while and then were called by the Hawthorne Reformed Church, that old 1818 daughter church of Sleepy Hollow, to become the pastor. And yes, Dean preached my ordination sermon. We were there in a time of, how can I call it, an exciting time. I was there for only 15 months, and yet within that time, 72 new members joined the church. Not because of me, but because they were moving out of Manhattan and those places closer to New York City. We were there for that time and enjoyed that time. However, there was a call that came, yes, from Susan Umpleby, and she said, Mr. C, she called that name to me. Are you coming? Are you coming? I said, what are you talking about, Susan? And she told me about Dean moving now to Schenectady. And she said, I hope you can come with us. Soon the committee came down, and I remember Carol as a little girl sat in the high chair, throwing her spoon down on the floor. And one of the members of the committee, all of whom we had known, tied a string around that spoon so that we could continue in our conversation. And so I was called back to Fair Street Church. I would say called back home. It was a beautiful experience, though it was a controversial one. The ministers of Westchester didn't wish me to go to another place so soon, but the ministers up in Ulster classes said, yes, we want you to come. And so did the members of the congregation. We were just thrilled that we were being welcomed back. This time, not in the Sunday school rooms where we had to stay, but at 54 Pearl Street. And for us who had grown up in our apartments and our little flats, this was a mansion for us. And Betty certainly would have wanted to have moved it all the way across country. We loved it so much. The years of the 1960s were very troubling years and challenging years for us in America. It certainly was with the March on Washington, with the assassination of President Kennedy and his brother Bobby and Martin Luther King Jr. It was the years of Vietnam, issues of race, denominational mergers. We were going to be merging with the Southern Presbyterians, but that ended up not working. We were talking about evangelism, theology, and then we wondered about our youth. And they started a place called The Hobbit, a coffee house downstairs in the room. Every Friday night, they would hang the curtains, and every Saturday night, they'd take them back, and they welcomed the kids of the community into our church and listen to music that was provided for them. I still point out that we felt there was a congregation that loved their Lord, but also were able to support me. They made adjustments, of course they did. I'm a social activist, but they had faith in what we were doing together. They wrestled with some of the issues, they prayed together, and they committed themselves to moving forward. Was this a gathering of people? Yes. Was it a time of genuine caring? Yes. Was it a growing commitment both to our Lord and to the church and to their pastor? Yes, there certainly was, and I hope that that is what we're finding now at Fair Street Reformed Church. I love the theme that you chose, celebration in the potter's hands, that you are willing to go forward and be formed and sculpted and shaped by the one who is your Lord. And I want to tell you, I believe that you are in good hands. I send my love and my affection to you and my prayers. Let the celebration begin.